There's a key relation about how the finance minister has been able to supervise his ministry and impacted the industry, because we also do know that he is deeply involved in this domestic debt restructuring program, giving them new terms for individual bondholders to take up or to sign on to. Now, it looks like they've been adamant. And what we even have now is that there's even an extension. Now, we'll take you through some slides and then we'll give you an insight. So the slides will be on your screen. You'll see how the central bank is also deeply exposed as far as we're talking debt is concerned. And you see those slides quickly. The timelines by which the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has been shifting the goalposts, postponing. So we have the first deadline, December 19, 2022. Second deadline, December 30. Third deadline this year, January 16. Fourth deadline, January 31. Fifth deadline, February 7. And the latest is that, well, today is the 8th. In 2 days' time, that will make it on Friday, is the latest deadline. More so, you go to the slide on the central bank and the concerns about how the central bank government securitizing 40 billion cedis in central bank loans, raising concerns, creating instability on the market. And because banks have been deeply exposed, it brings into sharp focus whether the finance minister should be doing better than he is. Now, this is his response to the individual bondholders when they picketed or petitioned him. Let's take a watch.
Been able to do, being really very clear on where we are as a nation and what part of the contribution you want to. So I want at least one of you to tell me exactly what it is that is so egregious.
We know that you talk about moving from 0 to 15, but you see, none of us contracted bonds at 0%. So it's hard for us to even make a comparison from 0. For us, we look at it from what terms we accepted when we took our bonds that were issued. And if we are haggling over 3%, that should tell you how dire our situation is and how vulnerable we are. If 3% means so much to us, so that's what we want you to look at. We are asking for you to totally exempt us from this program. We are not that many, you know. You know the total value. You do know that a third of us or so go beyond 5%. But those 5 years. But you know, when people were buying bonds, they saw the terms of the bonds. And they had objectives when they bought bonds. Their objectives are that they are looking for maturities to match certain plans in their lives. And that is why people picked bonds that they picked at the time that they did. So even though it's a good thing that you may be wanting to bring some people whose bonds mature way beyond 2028 to that point, bringing it forward to 2028 or so, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing that you're doing for them, because they have their objectives and they know why they picked the bonds that they picked. But please, we depend on our coupons. We've done all the math. We know what to expect. We know how to add that to whatever other income we get, either from Social Security or whatever. We've planned our lives around these bonds. Some people, when they do the computation, they tell you that what they are going to be getting per month or so is just like 1,000 cedis or 2,000 cedis or something, but they have planned their lifestyles around it. So please, total exemption is what we ask. We are not many. Please look at us and do this for us. We are vulnerable. We don't want to be a burden on you, on the country, or on our children. We want to be a burden on ourselves. And so we planned our lives in such a way that we will be a burden on ourselves.
And a refrain in mainstream and social media, as well as in the public space, is that the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, will not listen to anything regarding this, even with proposals that are indicating that, well, if there were cuts, we could save up to 54 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Titus Glover, how do you respond to this? Call the man, tell him something.
He doesn't listen.
Roland, first of all, when you look at bonds, individual bond holders who walk into the financial institutions to purchase these bonds, or every bond or government security, you look at three things. Mutala, first you look at the principal that you contribute to the purchase, the interest that will accrue to your benefit, and the duration, the time it will expire, and if you want to roll over, you look at that. Now, you give us different dates that the negotiations, the conclusion of these negotiations have been changing, including yesterday, when we were expecting that bondholders will sign on to these things, and they've extended for another couple of days. What I know in collective bargaining, when it comes to negotiations, time is of essence. And for that matter, the social partners must come together to find out what we think will be in the best interest of all parties. And for that matter, I am not comfortable the way we extend.
No, it's the finance minister, it's not we.
No, what I'm saying
the
is
finance minister, he just keeps shifting the dates.
Calm down.
Rough.
Calm down.
I like that, rough.
What I'm saying is that, for example, this very change that he has done in a couple of days, sitting back and observing the way the negotiations is going, you should be able to tell if those few days will not be adequate. You should give yourself a number of time. So you'll be able to absorb all the pressures and the negotiation which is go. Because, for example, from the December 19th to December 30th, why don't you make it 30th? Do you understand? Then from the 30th, then you came to January 16th. It should have been January 31st. So they'll be able to have enough time.
Mr. Tasso Glover, even the key criticism
I am
was
coming.
that
I'm coming.
the
Calm down.
pre-stakeholder
You are
engagement...
in haste. Calm down.
I should relax.
Please, calm down. So I'm saying that the bit in pieces of the dates that we're changing, it means that the discussion and the negotiations need to be done more so that people will have the opportunity to express how they want it to be done. But when you make it shorter and you come back and you continue, you come back, it is not helping. Now, next week Sunday, my mother will be 79 years.
Your mother?
If my late father had been alive today, January 30th, he will be 85 years. My mother worked with Planned Parenthood Association of Ghana, PPAG. They were this institution that had the support of the American government in family planning and all that. So she came on way back. I had two separate calls from two gentlemen, old men. I don't know them from Adam. One said, Titus Glover, we have watched your political trajectory from your days of unionism in Tema, in the workers' struggle, your youth activism, when you became an assembly member, when you became a member of parliament, when you became a deputy minister, and until recently, you ran for a national organizer. Please, I'm a pensioner. I am saying this and I want to make a passionate appeal to the president. On Monday, I was on Adum TV and Adum FM, and one of the tabloids said these pensioners are going to picket at the Ministry of Finance. I watched your news, 7 o'clock on Monday night. When I saw these old men and women
with the placards,
holding the placards,
how did you feel?
Some are sit. I felt bad.
Tell the president. Tell the finance minister.
Hold on.
They don't listen.
Hold on. I felt bad that these old guys have left their homes and come and picket at the Ministry of Finance, appealing that we should take them out of this program. How much is the pensioner? My mother, how much she earned? Pittance. So I want to make an appeal to the president that he should intervene on this pensioners.
Do you think if the president was listening, he wouldn't have intervened?
Oh, I don't like you using that word. The president is. I don't like.
But he's
that
not
word.
listening.
It's not a bad. It's not a good language. Please.
What language should I use? Just tell me the language.
Please, don't go there.
The president is unconcerned.
Please. You are making it worse. Come on. So I please, Mutala, Pansoro. I'm making this passionate appeal. My mother is an old pensioner. And when I look at these people, it will be politically suicidal for our party and government to these pensioners to be added to this program. I'm appealing.
It's not the fault of the president. It's the finance minister
I'm appealing
that
to the
he has
president.
appointed.
If he's watching, he must look at these things and take the pensioners out. Look at them. And this old man, he was virtually whipping on me on the phone. He said, Nikwate, why are you doing this to us? So, you need some to buy drugs to take care of himself. How many years more left on them? I understand that we are not in normal times. And for that matter, we want to find a space that we're able to pay some of our debts that we have as a country. These debts were not Akufo-Addo's debt alone. These are debts that have been built up with time.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So we need to have a space that we can pay these debts. The government can continue to do the project and the development that he wants to do in this country. So clearly, Roland, I am worried. Seeing them. My mother is a pensioner. So I want to appeal to the president that he should watch this one and save the pensioners' funds for us.
Honorable, if Honorable Mutala,
Disclaimer first.
disclaimer.
The debts are not anybody's debts. They
Over
are
300
debts.
billion in
They
addition.
they are your debts.
It's all of us.
You
It's
took
not
all of-
Akufo-Addo's
is
debt
it,
alone.
is it even now
It's
300,
look,
over
there are
400
some-
billion?
There are some loans that you
I'm
procured
saying
have
that-
matured.
hold on.
So what are you talking like
all
this?
those loans we
They all
procured.
add up.
They all add up. It's
Hold
not,
on.
it's
They
not
got to
only
120
Hold on.
billion.
I'm
Please.
saying that all the loans we procured.
Please.
All
Don't
the loans
speak the
we
truth.
procured. I'm being truthful. All the loans we procured were added up to the total 120 billion that we had. You have added over 300. In fact, it's now over 400 billion.
When
then you turn
Kufuor
around.
left you 9 billion, how much did you add to it? To 120 billion.
Oh, fantastic.
It's 1,365%.
Fantastic. And you have added how
Of
many?
almost about $29
With
billion.
what, with what
So what are you
projects?
talking about?
You have added so much, there is nothing to show. Absolutely nothing. Tell me what is there to show. The only thing that is there to show is the president galloping the globe with private jets. That is what is there to
Mutala,
show.
how do you react to how the finance minister reacts to the individual
you know,
bondholders?
this government, you see, when I was watching the clip and I was observing the minister for finance, he doesn't give a jot.
He looked like that.
No, he has never given a jot about the suffering of people in this country. I mean, listening to that woman, I nearly wept, to be very honest with you. And listening to our mother, your mother's story, and also the old man who called you, frankly speaking, but for the fact that we're on national television, one would have shed tears. It's just completely unacceptable. What got me, what hurt me, when the woman said, look, some of us, at the end of the day, what we take is 1,000 Ghana cedis. Maybe that woman has grandchildren, assuming that the parents of the grandchildren are deceased. There are several old women and old men who are taking care of their grandchildren because their parents are no more. How are they going to survive? How, someone should tell me how they are going to survive. And you cause it. It is not caused by anybody. It is caused by your incompetence. And sometimes, and to put it mildly, outright thievery that we experience under this government. Now, when you speak about this, they tell us that don't use those words. There can't be any word to describe this government than a government that is engaged in outright thievery. Someone should explain to me why we are going through some of these things we are going through. And when people raise issues, the minister on one breath will say, we are going to do this, and another breath, another thing. We were informed that individual bonds were not going to be affected. And you, the media, you came out with those stories. These are the assurances given by the minister. What is happening now? Initially, we were informed that pensions were not going to be affected. Hey, pensions are affected. The next day, trust me, You media houses will be affected. If they had the way, they would do that. Now, if you go in to purchase a bond, something must attract you to wanting to do that, as the woman indicated.
Has to be the rate.
Now, you go in for it with set objectives. Maybe within this time, when it matures, these are my plans. These are the things I intend to do. Now, someone mess up the economy and then come out to impose his way of doing things on you without even having the decency to involve you. But for the noise people made, this government would have gone ahead to do what they wanted because they have been able to do several things and go scot-free without anybody raising any question about that. It is completely unacceptable. And frankly speaking, I think that this is wickedness. Absolutely wickedness. Look, it's not going to affect them. It's not going to affect him, his family, and his children. But people are going to lose their lives as a result. Education of grandchildren are going to be truncated. As a matter of fact, survival of people are going to be affected as a result of the incompetence of a government that talks much and does nothing.
Now, at what point in time do we have to compel the finance minister to make considerations for this? Because even if you listen to his response to them, he says, well, we don't need to sacrifice because we need this to get an IMF board approval.
Look, sometimes I find it extremely difficult to see a semblance of democratic governance in this country under this government. Yeah. To be very honest, desperate as I search to find out whether I see something that resembles a decent democratic governance, I don't find them. It is like we are ruled by a king. And the president sees himself as a king. And therefore, he does what he wants to do. Look, sometimes we unjustifiably blame this minister for finance. Why would you blame the minister for finance when he drives his authority from somebody? The person from whom he drives the authority to do the things he wants to do should be held absolutely accountable for some of these things. It's the president.
So you blame both of them?
Look, everything the minister...
Are you saying both of them should be blamed?
Look, that Nache Baba on Wuru Nachimba. If the chief comes home with weird haircut, what do you expect his subjects to do?
Say that again.
In the Nache Baba on Wuru Nachimba. If the chief comes home with weird haircut, what do you think his subjects will do?
They'll laugh at him.
They'll laugh at him. That is even better. They come home with Tapejo. You know Tapejo, the one... Topio Joe.
You mean the punk?
Yeah, yes, they'll come home with...
The Tupac and...
Well, whatever anybody does, they look up to the president. So the president himself is encouraging some of this. If the president doesn't encourage it, at the end of the day, we didn't vote Ken Ofori-Atta. The people of this country voted President Nana Addo, default as the elections was. But they voted him because he was declared the winner. So the people of this country are looking up to the president to show leadership. But it seems to me he's unwilling to show leadership either deliberately or the man is just too powerful. You remember when the over 90 MPs held a press conference demanding that the minister resigns or be forced to jump? The next day, the cedi began appreciating against the dollar. Because these things, they are speculative. The market responds sometimes to speculation.
So the expectation was on the part of the president
to do it had to do with the individual. And the president simply could not do what
Are you saying he's worsening the situation that Ghana finds itself?
Who?
In terms of our debt and how perhaps we need the...
There is no way out. I mean, I'm sorry to say this. I mean, if your debt to GDP is over 90%, I mean, there is no way out. If there is any way out, tell me. The only way out is we boot out this super incompetent and corrupt administration. And it's so sad that we have to go through this trauma for the next 1 to 2 years. That is the sad aspects of it. Really? Look at him, a fine gentleman. He could have been a very good minister for employment. He has the experience of engaging in unionized activities. The president is unwilling to do that. That is why I'm encouraging my senior brother to go swear affidavit. Just add Ofori-Atta to your name, and your name will be Titus Glover Ofori-Atta. And I can bet my last penny. The next day you will be appointed the Minister of Employment.
Roland, one thing I want to share before we go is that the pensioners have threatened court action.
And the president doesn't look like he cares.
That is my fear.
No, his finance minister.
You know, that is my fear. That if they don't take them out of the program, they will end up in the court. The early days of the discussion of these domestic...
Wouldn't they be justified to take the government or the finance
minister?
minister?
It is their right.
No, you can't take it. Be justified.
It is their right. You can't take it away from them. You know, so if a pensioner is taking 1,000 Ghana cedis in that investment, this is what she lives on. So clearly, we need to look at it holistically. And I don't want Murtala to have the impression that the president is sitting unconcerned. And for that matter, yes, that is the impression you are creating, that he should be held responsible.
Well, he says the president is sitting pretty. He really doesn't care.
I'm saying that's what he does.
He follows everything that is going on.
Doesn't care.
He does.
He's looking at these. He's looking at these pensioners. They are picketing in the sun, and the president takes no action.
Knowing Akufo-Addo, I can assure you that this very pictorial that has been shown for the couple of days now, trust me, something good will come out of it.
People were gunned down. People were gunned down during the election.
Something good will come out of this thing because
is there a
it is
different
not in
Akufo-Addo?
the interest of us.
Is there a different Akufo-Addo?
Oh, Murtala.
No, I'm asking
It's
whether
not
there's a
in the
different
interest of all of
Akufo-Addo.
us. So there's something should look at it.
Well, we're taking a break. When we come back, we'll look at countries that have gotten a buy-in before they had a board approval with the IMF and how they did that and which countries are those. Stay with us. We also have a response from Bright Simmons, a vice president for Imani Africa. And then we'll come to some conclusions on, ideally, what the finance minister should be doing as the deadline has been extended to the 10th of February 2023. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.
Government was adamant about having the staff level agreement approved in December of 2022 before the end of the year at all costs. That means that there were some aspects of the program still under negotiation that were in a way fast-tracked. Now, when you do that in exchange for speed, sometimes you don't negotiate as thoroughly as you should. And that means that the IMF, to play it safe, bundled up a bunch of prior actions that the government had to meet before the staff level agreement could be considered concluded and then taken to the board. So it was a provisional arrangement. Now that meant the prior actions that were then listed as requirements before this provisional agreement could be sent to the board of the IMF were quite numerous, not more numerous than some other, protracted instances in other countries and elsewhere, but significantly numerous than we've had in the past in some respects. So what that then meant was the government had to get finance assurances from its creditors, not just in Ghana, but also overseas. And it also had to get assurance from bilateral creditors. So these are the countries that lend money to Ghana, like Germany, China, India, the US, Britain, and the rest. So when the government says it has to do the domestic debt exchange, of course it has to do the domestic debt exchange, but the domestic debt exchange is part of a list of other actions it has to take, some of which, as I'm sure you've seen, have already been underway, like the utilities, concluding the budgetary process, because I don't know if you kept your eye on the board, but during the budgeting process, there were some bills that, to my understanding, were not passed in relation to the budget before the recess. So the budget, whatever outstanding issues in relation to the budget also have to be completed. On top of that, we need to do the domestic debt exchange as well as the external debt exchange. And then the bilateral debt cancellation, which is what we are looking for, either moratorium, freeze, or cancellation. Hi, can you hear me? I'm frozen.
I can hear.
Well, so that was recorded. Bright Simmons, Vice President of Imani. But we'll also take you through a slide that does indicate the countries that wanted a certain buy-in from their stakeholders before they went to the IMF board. Grenada, for example, had 100% participation. Ukraine also did that. Mozambique, 99.5%. Chad, as we regularly call them as Chad, but when you speak to some Chadians, they'll call it, they say Chad. So 100%. They also had 100% too. Barbados, 93%. Ecuador, 100%. Argentina, 99%. For us, we're struggling for 80%. Led by the finance minister, Ken Oforiatta. Now, when we come back to home, it's been our responses so far. But how do we make sure that we tell Ken Oforiatta to make sure that he listens to them? Because what has happened is that if you look at the last 3 postponements, there's been some reticence or reluctance on behalf of these individuals, and it looks like they feel if they hold on a bit, they can get better terms. And we run the risk of that.
The situation we find ourselves now is problematic. Whatever we'll do to get ourselves out, to enable us to have this IMF bailout, we have to do it. That is why this domestic debt exchange program is on the table. In terms of the foreign one, these are long-term investments. JP Morgan's and other people. For that one, the investment is a long-term one. So that one I can suspect can easily be managed, because in every investment, there are ups and downs, So even if you have benefited for a long time, and once in a while there are few challenges here and there in terms of the long-term one, it can be managed there. But the most challenging one is the domestic one that we find ourselves in. So I think that the next couple of days that the Ministry of Finance has given, I would have loved to be extended, because I will still think that the engagement must continue, to let people understand that it's important that at least we'll also try to support government to deal with the situations we have in our hands. But by and large, I humbly want to appeal to His Excellency the President on the pensioners one.
Today you're just doing appeals.
Of course, that's what I can do. That's all I can do. That he should look at the pensioners one, because my mother is a pensioner, and those
because the sentiments out there
it doesn't look good. And knowing the president, and I'm sure definitely he will do something about the pensioners.
What should we be doing together by him? Because
I don't know whether I should cry or I should laugh. When you repeatedly say knowing the president, I'm wondering whether there's a different Nanado or this one.
Which Nanado again do you have?
How many appeals haven't you guys made? To the extent that your entire parliamentary caucus, it started with 90 and it became the entire caucus, did not only make appeal. They held a press conference, they met the president, and they demanded that the president change the Minister for Finance. He's unwilling. When I put the question to you, to look straight into the cameras to tell me whether you are comfortable with this Minister for Finance still holding his position as Minister for Finance, you couldn't do that. And I can understand. Look, it's so hurtful that in a democracy where people are supposed to make contributions to shape the policy interventions of government, this government is absolutely unwilling to listen to anybody. Look, if you don't want to listen to NDC or listen to civil society organization, at least listen to some of the voices within your own party. And those voices are telling you that this thing is going to be catastrophic. To be very honest, if this thing is allowed to go, you listen to the story, there are many people out there who may not have the opportunity to speak to the people of this country directly, as this woman did. And those people will be going through trauma. Look, the consequences of this is going to be catastrophic. And to be very honest, the earlier something is done about it, the better. But to think that this president is going to act, to think that this minister is going to act based on this, that is not going to happen. We are being told now that Friday is the deadline. That by Friday, if you don't go through the applications, you are gone. How many people could have even gone to do the application online? How many people? The presumption is that anybody who is a pensioner or a bondholder should have access to internet and should be able to do that. There are many people who live in the villages. How are they going to do some of this? And so, frankly, the plea and the concerns now are like, Saya Mimbaka Yorkoro. You left your door ajar when it was heavily raining. And after the room is flooded with water, then it then dawns on you to close the door. That is what we are experiencing today. There is no turning back. Maybe perhaps we need to have some national prayer and fasting for this country. I think that is the only way. Because policies are not only defective, they are confusing. The entire government machinery is confused, absolutely confused. The sad aspect of it is that you listen to some of leading members of this MPP, some of them will tell you that, look, the man has finished destroying his government. Our worry is that he's now destroying our party. And that is what is happening. Look at even the appointment. Let's take Ministry of Trade, a ministry that I have some little understanding as to how things operate. He was on the committee for trade. I want him to tell me how my good friend, Higgledy-Piggledy, what's the name? Dr. Sticker, Dr. Amwa is going to work with Honorable K.T. Hammond.
Why can't they work together?
Well, he knows why I say it's going to be extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. And a very sensitive ministry such as Ministry of Trade. And he exalted some of the policies he thinks that this government implemented, even though we are not getting any positive results as a result of those policies. Everything, or any means by which we can get out of this mess created can be done from the Ministry of Trade and Industries. And you have two very complex individuals to go to that ministry. It's going to be very, very difficult. In fact, Honorable Adam Mohammed Amin Anta, fantastic individual, very brilliant person. I'm not saying this because he taught me, but I can tell you that he has the capacity. But as to whether we need a Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance when we have two deputy ministers, frankly speaking, I can't get it.
If you go to our streams, for example, there's Prince Anani Salasi, and he raises a question. When they say the situation we find ourselves, you and who? That phrase,
all of us.
Does that make it appealing enough?
No, all of us, except those who live within the four walls of the Flagstaff House. But
they're also Ghanaians, aren't they?
Do they care? You have just said here that the president doesn't listen. He had problems with that. Now, if the president doesn't listen, and you think that the president ought to listen and he's not willing to listen, what do? You get out of the four walls of the Flagstaff House. Those people there do not care. Frankly speaking, my good brother, he cares. He cares because he has used personal experience. For example, his mother. What the woman will go through as a result of these decisions of government. And the phone calls that he received. Many people have received that. There are harrowing stories. If you listen to some of them, you would cry for them. And the president doesn't seem to care. Look, if for nothing at all, ask the minister to go. If for nothing at all. Because you see, the moment you ask the minister for finance to go and bring in a different person, people will begin to sympathize and empathize with you, even though the economic mess is occasioned by your incompetence and the incompetence of your appointees. But there will be some semblance of sympathy that people will have for you. But the man is not willing to do what people are asking him to do. And I predicted on your program almost a year ago that this man will not go. You see, the signals were sent to us earlier and we didn't know. That as a result of he not being well, the Minister of Finance was waiting for him. That ministry was waiting for him for months because he is the Matusala, he is the doyen of economic policies, yet the doyen has achieved nothing. Right. Instead of the president standing his ground and letting him go, he's not doing that.
Now, how do we make sure that everybody signs on? Martin Pebu over the weekend says that the current bonds they hold, for which they are being asked to go and exchange for the two new ones, the terms are better. So even though you pay interest this year.
Because the interest this year is 5 years, you move from 0 to 2 to 5. And I know percent. I know Martin and my good friend Senyo Hosi have been so vocal as spokesperson for these groups. If looking at the discussion they've had and it's the best, why not? They have to go for it. They have to go for it because the situation we find ourselves in now is not pleasant.
The situation we find ourselves. Prince
I still want to emphasize on the pensioners.
Call the president.
emphasize on the nation.
Call the old man.
Look at it again.
All right. So
because they have threatened that they'll go to court if they are added on the program.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We'll be giving to you some of your messages, sampling a couple for you, but these directly I took on the streams, also sent to me directly. Kofi Adai says, Titus Glover has today spoken and touched me. He should also consider adding Oforiatta to his name for appointment. That's from Kofi Adai. And then we have Aziz Donlawa. Touching individual bonds for the exchange program is totally unacceptable. It is ridiculous, unfair, and unfortunate. Looking at how much has been borrowed from the Bank of Ghana and generally leading us to a financial debt, Aziz Donla in Wa. We have this one, says, does Titus Glover also want to catch the eye of the president? Nanado wasn't bothered when 8 human beings were gunned down during election 2020. What makes him think that this president will be bothered about this pensioners? And that's from Jerry in North Town constituency. And Triddles, Triddle says, good morning, Roland, and to your panelists and viewers. The MPP has eaten all the national cake, and now their hands are in their pockets. What a terrible time to be a Ghanaian. And this one is coming from, the next one is coming from Sampi Yali. He says, Katie Hammond, and he is questioning, is this a reshuffle or a recycling? Katie Hammond has simply been rewarded for the hostile and ragged role he played as co-chair of the Oforiatta Censor Committee. This is not a reshuffle, but a recycling of loyal mate, Sampi Yali's sense. Well, that's where we have to go for a break. But we do have some great interactions today. We'll also let you know and let you in on all that has been happening. And then the conversations we have, we're talking also about Dr. Promise Safoga coming in, talking about fertility preservation, egg freezing for women. So if you're a woman, let's say, you're 25 years because you want to be a career woman, develop yourself, you would want to freeze your eggs when you're 22, 23, 24, 25, so that by the time you are 40 years, you can then have the child. Egg freezing in women. This is something we can take a look at. And Dr. Promise Safoga,
the Oforiatta is changing the date like the EC changing the results. Uncle Sam.
Allah. We also do have passing through the show today, Akwaboa, great guy, great musician, taken from his father, all the creative talents in the world, Senior Akwaboa. So we'll also have him passing through the studio. We're taking a break. We'll be right back. When we come back, all these right here on TV3 New Day.